There are two shifts that changed the self-care game for me. The first was adapting Inner Workout's definition of self-care, which is listening within and responding in the most loving way possible. With that definition, I stopped seeing self-care as something that I buy or an item on my to-do list and really started seeing it as this ongoing conversation with myself. The second shift that transformed my self-care experience was shifting from one-dimensional well-being to multi-dimensional well-being. Like I shared in the Inner Workout book, the mainstream conversation around self-care kept falling flat for me because it was flat. It was mostly one-dimensional, and these surface-level conversations cannot reach the depths of who you are. Multi-dimensional well-being helps us cultivate care-filled lives rather than Instagrammable #self-care moments. The 5 dimensions of well-being really gave me the vocabulary I needed to have a deeper conversation with myself, and I hope that this video will do the same for you. The 5 dimensions are inspired by this yogic concept called the koshas. I was first introduced when I was going through my yoga teacher training, and I remember leaning in as the teacher started sharing this concept. Something really clicked for me, because at that point I had been trying to practice self-care for a bit, but most of my care was really focused on my physical body. And that's kind of what we tend to do in society. You ask people about self-care and they talk about taking baths or getting their nails done or getting massages or doing a facial, all things that are really focused on the physical. Not bad, but not a complete picture of who we are either. And that realization helped me understand how I'm a person who loves to get a massage, but sometimes I could get a massage, it feels so good in the moment, but then I could leave that experience and still not feel fully cared for. And that's because I wasn't tending to the part of myself that needed care. So the 5 dimensions of well-being share the names of the koshas that inspired them: physical, energetic, mental and emotional, wisdom, and bliss. And even though the 5 dimensions draw inspiration from the koshas, I don't want to equate the two. So if you really want a more traditional recommendation of the koshas, I highly recommend that you dig into some yogic philosophy, either doing some reading on your own or finding someplace locally that teaches these concepts. I'm going to be talking about the 5 dimensions of well-being. They are the foundation for everything we do in Inner Workout, from the book to the app. And each of these dimensions has 2 or 3 subdimensions. We'll spend the rest of the video breaking down each of these. So let's start with the physical dimension of well-being. This dimension of well-being is about your relationship to your body. It's about being present in your body, knowing your body's nuances, and accepting your body as it is. For the embodiment subdimension of well-being, I really like Dr. Anne Safi Biasetti's definition of embodiment, which is living life informed through the sense experience of the body. So the embodiment subdimension invites us into a deeper level of presence in our physical bodies. Next up is body awareness. Pretty self-explanatory. It's about being tuned into your body and knowing its specific needs and preferences. And then finally, we have body acceptance. I know it's super big to talk about body positivity right now, which certainly has a place, but I want to be clear that body acceptance doesn't mean that you have to feel head over heels in love with your body all of the time. It's really about respecting your body as a partner who helps you move through the world. So earlier I talked about how we tend to focus as a society, we tend to focus our self-care on the physical, and even the way that we talk about the physical dimension of well-being within the 5 dimensions is slightly different than the popular conception. It's not about you need to weigh a certain amount, you need to eat a certain type of food, you need to move your body in this way for this long. It's really about being in your body and getting to know what your body needs. It's not prescriptive, it's a collaboration between you and your body. Next up is the energetic dimension of well-being. This dimension of well-being looks at your ability to monitor and regulate your energy in every aspect of your life through the breath and through energy zones. So let's talk about the subdimension of breath quality. It's pretty obvious that we need to breathe to live, but what we don't always think about is that when we breathe well, it helps us live well. The breath quality subdimension of well-being looks at whether your breath is helping your well-being or hindering it. Let's move into the energy zones. So there's this scientific principle that energy is never lost, it's only transferred. And what the energy zones help us do is track how energy is transferred in our lives through interactions, activities, relationships, and conversations that we have with ourselves. Ready for the mental and emotional dimension of well-being? This dimension explores what you're putting into your mind and what flows out of it as thoughts and feelings, all supported by the foundation of sleep. With the input subdimension, we know that our brain thrives when it is being fed nourishing content and is being stretched just beyond our comfort zone. The question this subdimension asks is your brain thriving? A good night's sleep looks different for everyone. So what we want to know with the sleep subdimension is how aware are you of what a good night's sleep looks like for you, and how often are you creating the conditions that allow you to be well rested? Then we have emotions. The emotions subdimension looks at your ability to access and then healthfully express your emotions. We have 2 more dimensions of well-being left to explore, but I want to pause and say I know that I'm going through these pretty quickly and at a pretty high level. If you want to go deeper into the subdimensions of well-being and your relationship to each of the subdimensions, that's exactly what the Inner Workout book is about. So if you want to go deeper, that's a resource. Okay, let's get into the wisdom dimension of well-being. So the wisdom dimension of well-being invites you to listen to and then act on your inner knowing in the present moment. With the self-trust subdimension, we acknowledge that trust is the foundation of any relationship, and that includes the relationship that you have with yourself. So this subdimension takes an honest look at the level of trust that you have with yourself. Then we've got focus. Life happens here and now in the present moment, but so often we're living in the past or we're living in the future. This focus subdimension explores your capacity to be grounded in the present moment. Finally, we've got aligned action. So it's one thing, and it's a really beautiful thing, to be able to access your inner wisdom, to be able to hear from it, but it's quite another to actually take action on those insights. So the aligned action subdimension is about acting on your inner wisdom and acting in alignment with that wisdom. And then we round it out with the bliss dimension of well-being. This dimension is rooted in transcendent connection to yourself, to your communities, and to something bigger than you. With connection to yourself, this means showing up as the fullest expression of you, rather than contorting yourself, twisting yourself to be whoever you think you should be. Then there's connection to community. As we often say it in our workout, self-care doesn't equal solo care. We need to be a part of communities where we can both give and receive care in order to thrive. Then we round it out with connection to something bigger. This subdimension reminds you that you play a small yet important role in an incredibly large universe. Being in nature, having a spiritual practice, and connecting to your values are all pathways to reaching something bigger than you. So you've learned a little bit about each of the 5 dimensions of well-being and their subdimensions. That's amazing. And that's just the beginning. I really believe that knowledge is most powerful when it's applied. So let's talk about how you can apply these 5 dimensions in your daily life and in your self-care. So the first thing that you can do is a self-care audit. List out the things that you're doing that you consider to be self-care, and then notice what dimensions they fall under, and start to ask yourself some questions. If you're looking for a cheat code to do a self-care audit, try our free Take Care assessment. It's a 75-question assessment. It measures your well-being across all the dimensions and subdimensions. Then it gives you this really nice PDF report that you can try with a few practices based on your results. So that's a free tool that you can add to your toolbox as you're starting to think about making your self-care more multidimensional. The next thing that you can try is getting to the root of your self-care needs. So really get into the habit of asking yourself, what part of me needs care right now? Is going to bed early what you need today, or would you be better served by spending some time on that task you've been avoiding for weeks? Is it helpful for you to go to a workout class today, or is that another way that you're avoiding the emotions that you haven't been processing? Your self-care becomes so much more effective when you're able to listen within and then respond directly to the part of you that needs care. Another thing that you can do is start to build skills in a different dimension. So a lot of times when we feel like we need care, we just go to our go-to practices in the dimensions of well-being that we're most comfortable working with. But if you really want to practice multidimensional self-care, that requires some intentional skill building in the dimensions and subdimensions that we tend to ignore. And I'll let you in on a secret. The places that we tend to ignore or resist tend to be the places where we also need the most care. So you might intentionally build some skills around embodiment or aligned action or whatever place you kind of neglected. This was a big thing for us when we were developing the Inner Workout app, was to make it easy for you to build skills across all of the dimensions and subdimensions. We created these things called journeys, which are mini courses. They last between 3 and 10 days, and they're really intentionally designed to help you build skills in different dimensions and subdimensions of well-being in 10 minutes or less. So you can DIY this. You can use the Inner Workout app as a source of support. The goal here is that you are building those skills and taking care across all of the dimensions of well-being. The last thing I want to share is really more of a mindset shift. I know when you're introduced to a new concept or framework, it's really easy to try and shoehorn things in and say, this can only be the physical dimension, or this can only be the mental and emotional dimension. But what's really cool about this framework is that it's inviting you to see the multidimensionality of you. A lot of the practices that you do are going to span multiple dimensions. So for example, I love dancing. That very obviously fits into the physical dimension. I'm moving my body, but it also causes me to be really present. I'm focused. That's the wisdom dimension. And as I'm dancing with the other dancers in the class, I feel this sense of connection to them and to something bigger than me. That's the bliss dimension. So whether you're a dancer or you do some other type of practice, I want you to celebrate the multidimensionality of your care, whether that's through one practice that touches on several dimensions, or it's through a variety of intentionally selected practices. So we're going to end it there. You have been introduced to the 5 dimensions of well-being and their subdimensions, and you've learned a little bit about how you can make your self-care and inner work more multidimensional. Hopefully, this is just the start of your journey. An Inner Workout will be there every step of the way. If you like this explainer video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Make sure that you check out our other resources as well. Take care.